Are you ready to get your feet wet? Because this is the Knowledge Pool, hosted by Gathering Information. We're here to bring you a casual conversation between friends about everything to do with collecting, trading, and playing Magic the Gathering.
I am Tams.
I am Step.
And I am Laura.
So put on your bathing suits and dive right into the Knowledge Pool. Happy New Year!
I thought you'd wait for me. That's okay. Happy New Year!
Welcome to episode 40 of the Knowledge Pool.
Yay!
We had, was it 2 weeks we took off?
A week.
A week or two. But we're back now after the holidays, and we're going to chat at you a little bit.
Mm-hmm. We've lots to talk about. We thought we had nothing, and then we realized, oh dear.
Well, it's been, you know.
We have lots of little things.
Yeah.
Which make a giant show.
Well, maybe not that
We're
either.
the Kamatari Damacy of...
Oh my gosh, we totally are. rolling.
So, how are you guys after the holiday? Back to normal yet?
Well, I went into a food coma, and then I went into a sleep coma.
And then you went to...
And then I had to get back to work.
And then you went to the gym today.
Yes. Yeah, that was exciting.
Nice.
Sure, nice. Yeah.
Well, we'll go with nice. Hey, we're in the same getting healthy boat, too.
We are.
We're on day 3. It feels like day 652.
I know. All I want is a pizza.
Dinner was good.
Dinner was delicious.
Very
Cashews are like my favorite nut. And
yeah. Chicken and vegetables. So healthy.
And if you've never had one before, you should try a pomelo.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Low GI fruit, and it's delicious.
From the Asian food store, usually.
Yeah. I think they have them at like Metro now too, but...
Probably way overpriced.
I don't know what the American, I'm assuming we're going to have American listeners.
Whole Foods.
Yeah.
I don't know. They're $3 each, so.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
They're actually one of the original citruses. They're like
That's right.
ancient fruit.
We listen to a podcast about citrus fruit.
Basically, it's less sweet than an orange and more sweet than a grapefruit.
Yeah.
So
and less tart than a grapefruit, which is important.
Yeah, I don't like grapefruits, but I love pomelo.
And they're a little drier than most citrus fruits, so they're not like leaching all over your fingers, and they're so good.
Yeah, they're very encapsulated.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And
giant. They're the size of a small
toddler's head.
Yeah. Anyway, we're here to talk about magic, ostensibly.
Yep. Yeah.
Although maybe I'll just do a shout out here to my new project that I started, 3 days ago.
It's true. What are you doing, Stat?
I'm playing video games. I know, right?
He's a little slow to the table. I've been doing that for a year.
You have.
But you have a really cool little thing going on.
Well, I have a whole Steam library full of games that I never ever get to play because we're always too busy, working or recording podcasts or whatever. So I decided that I'm going to play a game every single day. And since I'm going to do that, why not record it? So I started a Let's Play channel where I'm going to play through my entire Steam library, no matter how long it takes. At this point, it will take 3 years.
Does that mean that you're going to finish every game in your Steam library?
Probably not.
Because I heard you played a great game today.
Oh, so it's not that the game was terrible, but it was clunky. Like... It was called, what was it called? Soulcraft? And it's a gauntlet style game, or like a Torchlight kind of Diablo style game, but the controls were so bad. And not left-hand friendly, which I am left-handed, so...
that makes it tough.
There's your problem.
Yeah.
But to be fair, yesterday you played an amazing game.
The Stanley Parable? Yeah, I've been wanting to play that one forever.
I watched it. I watched his Let's Play, and it was so good. The narrative is just, it's
I'll
brilliant.
probably go back to that one and play it just, to play it.
The PX, there are a bunch of endings, I think.
Yeah, I'm going to check my Steam library and see if I have it, because I think I want to play through it myself.
Well, you do have my shared Steam library.
Oh, that's fair. That's fair.
Anyway, this is not a video game podcast. This is a magic podcast. So, what have we been up to?
Well, we have a little bit of news I think we're going to talk about first.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Spoilers season?
Yeah, first of all, there is spoilers out for Rivals of Ixalan.
Mm-hmm.
So
if
if
you
want
looked
to
at
go...
any?
you want to go check it out, I would suggest going online because we're not going to talk about it very much.
Oh, wow. You ever say something in your brain's like,
Yeah.
whoa? Okay, so without... I got it back. So without having been on the internet looking at magic stuff at all, I'm going to assume that everybody's kind of hoping that this does for Ixalan what Our did for Amonkhet.
It seems like they're very much trying to strengthen the tribal themes.
I think we talked about it a little bit in our last episode, hoping that was what was going to happen.
I'm hoping.
I don't know that the tribes are kind of everybody on the rails, but not the color rails, you know?
Yeah, it's very much you better jump into the right deck very quickly or else you're in trouble. But tied into that, and the reason that we're not really going to be going into depth on the details like we usually do for the spoilers is that there's a pre-release coming up for Rivals of Ixalan.
Yep.
In about 2 weeks, on the 16th.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of individually, I think, all three of us decided we're going to try and go into this one a bit less spoiled than usual.
Yeah, I'm usually all up on the spoilers because I'm interested in getting the most spike value.
And you guys usually do set reviews.
A set review.
Yeah.
We've decided we're not going to do a set review for this one because I, again, want to revamp the way we do set reviews.
Also, for me, the problem was we didn't play a lot of Ixalan, so I don't feel comfortable tackling a second set when I don't really recall, or I haven't seen the fallout of what the cards in the first set have ended up being like.
We played a lot of Ixalan sealed. Which is not like...
Yeah, but I was in one deck, so...
Yeah. That's
you
fair.
know, it doesn't really... And I don't really remember, to be honest, you know.
That's fair. So I just kind of wanted to get the experience again of going in blind and having to make card selections on the fly. Like the first time, or the last time I did that was, I think, Fate Reforged. And I honestly couldn't tell the difference which was going to be better, Swift Kick or Savage Punch. And I like to think that I would be able to make that that pick better now, you know? So I'm curious to see how I'll do, basically. I want to sort of use this pre-release as a check to my card evaluation skills.
That's pretty smart, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, just going to a pre-release with, you know, just some vague knowledge. I mean, we all at least are passingly familiar with most of the first set, so
Yeah, we
there's
know
not
what the
gonna
tribes are going to be,
Yeah,
right?
there's not going to be that much new for us. It's just kind of fun.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it puts you into the mindset of what almost all pre-release goers are at, which is just, oh yeah, I saw a couple things online.
Yeah.
That's, you know, about it. Like, you don't need to have memorized all the combat tricks in the
Yeah,
format.
that's something that I forget sometimes, that, you know, I go in and I'm like, oh, have you looked at the set? And most people are like, no, not really. And I'm like, really?
Yeah, I've you know,
I've
watched
been
a couple of
living
YouTube videos.
this set for the last 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's different. But do you find that there is a benefit to going in blind?
First of all, I find it more fun.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, you get that sense of exploration on the spot.
It feels like Christmas to me because you never know what you're going to
Surprise.
open.
And not only that, but you get to sit down and just go, oh, you know, I bet Limited Resources said this card was bad, but I'm going to try and see what happens.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm going to have to try to not listen to the set reviews
Yeah.
that other people put out.
Yeah, I think for me the big benefit is not getting biased by people that I do respect their opinion on cards before I get a chance to make them in my own vacuum, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a very good way to just get practice at evaluating cards within a specific context.
Yeah.
Without help from other people.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that should be interesting. So, if somebody came to you, like, say I came to you and I was like, hey, Laura, hey, Steph, I don't know anything about this set. I'm going to the pre-release. What do I look for? Like, how do I approach it? What would your advice be?
Sealed is generally a little bit slower than draft, so just keep that in mind. You can usually get away with a slightly higher curve, although you still don't want to get run over, so 2 drops are still pretty good. And try and play all the removal that you can, especially if it's legit removal.
Yeah, play your removal is the best, and play your bombs at this point, just because the bombs tend to be the only things that are like the floor on how bad a card is, as long as it's affecting the board, is no longer that low. Yeah. Like a creature is a creature is a creature. So the really excellent cards do kind of stand out.
And I would say, even just based on, me and Tams' experience with the last pre-release, sometimes playing really bad equipment that gives your creatures evasion can be worth it if you're playing big creatures. Like, we both ran Cobbled Wings in our green-white dinosaur decks.
Yep.
And I liked it fine, just because sometimes I can't deal with a flyer.
And certainly not a 6/6 flyer.
Exactly. So... Yeah. Like with the set, a lot of the merfolk are unblockable.
Yeah.
Or it can give things unblockable, or it can become unblockable, that sort of thing. So you might want to evaluate things a little bit differently just based on that context.
I guess the other evaluation tool that I would want to make people aware of is looking for things that are like other cards. Like, there's always going to be a 3 damage burn spell in red, whether it costs 1 mana or 5, it's going to be there. And how good that is depends on the set, sure, but at least you know what to look for. There's always going to be, like, a green pump spell of some kind.
And if it gives trample, you should probably play it.
And a 2/2 for 2 with some sort of upside.
If it's lifelink in white and a vampire, you should probably play it.
Probably. Yeah. So things like that, you're always going to see.
Yeah.
So that's my usual lookout.
Yeah. And I think one thing that's making it a bit easier this particular time around is just that spoiler season is so condensed. Because of the holidays, they're basically just dumping everything this week.
Yeah.
And... if you want to avoid spoilers, that makes it very easy to do. Like, just don't go to the Magic subreddit.
Or Facebook, in my case.
Right. Or try to avoid the Magic communities on Facebook, specifically. Yeah. But, if you want to avoid it, it's easy enough to just go, oh, I guess I won't download a limited resources set review.
Yeah.
Until after I've done it. Right. It's not what everybody's going to be talking about for the next month and a half or anything like that.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, we've already had a bunch of things spoiled, and I have spent the last 2 days very pointedly not looking at them. I have seen some flavor aspects, like some cards with some people in some colors that are interesting, but I'm not...
Is it blue-white?
Actually, it was green-white. But I'm not paying any attention to that yet.
Fair enough. So
interestingly, so far no Gatewalker, Oath of the Gatewatch Planeswalkers have been spoiled for this set, and we've already seen 2 Planeswalkers.
Yeah, so which is probably all of them.
Maybe Castaway Jace is the only Jace that will get this set, which is fine because boy is he not good. Called it, by the way.
Well, we'll see. Standard a year from now, something will happen.
Oh, I'm sure energy will still be in play. Even though the whole set's been rotated out, there'll still be energy decks.
Can't it go away?
It's like podless pod, energyless energy.
That's right. Jeez. Just Teamer good stuff.
Sure. Hey, speaking of Teamer good stuff, we played a bunch of just random Winston drafts over the holidays, and I ended up with a sweet Teamer deck because we played with a deck builder's toolkit basically.
Okay.
And I took all of the land, and there are 2 of each color dual land there. So I basically had my run of whatever 3 colors I wanted to play. I could have played 5 colors.
Did you have any playables?
I had plenty of playables.
It was annoying, and he got 2 games out of me, and that's it, because I was not able to beat that deck at all.
You were in, a dedicated Ixalan black-white vampire deck?
It was amazing! Sweet. I had 2 copies of the gold. You get 3.
Call the Feast?
Yeah, Call and then one of the white ones, and...
Call the Bloodline, right?
I think it's Call to the Feast.
Whatever. Yeah, anyway, I had so many. And then I had the dude... that when he comes into play, your opponent... He's basically the vampire Gary.
Yeah.
And I was like filling my board, and he's like, ping ping, your vampires, ping ping. And I'm like, stop genociding my vampires.
Because Chandra's Pyrohelix is really good against 1/1 tokens.
You monster.
So I ended up only draining him for 6 life instead of the 12 I could have. It was so upsetting.
I was basically red removal with good green creatures.
Oh, so your league deck.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was such a jerk.
It was so sweet. So speaking of Winston Draft, we talked about it on our last episode, I think, but you should totally do one. They're sweet. It's so much fun.
Yeah, we've been doing the cube. I think all 3 of us have been Winston drafting the cube. But also for somebody's birthday, we got 200 pack rando dollar store thingies and threw those together and did a 4-person Winston.
Yeah, for my birthday. That's what I wanted to do. So we had our old roommate, not old, he's not old, but former roommate who plays Magic, come over, and the 4 of us played. And it's really neat playing with Magic cards from the dollar store, because there was stuff that was fairly old, and then there was stuff right up into Ixalan, so there was a lot of random stuff.
There were a couple of rares.
Yep. I don't remember what, but...
well, I got the one where you get to go get an Eldrazi from outside the game.
Right.
Call from the Infinity or something? Something Infinities? Blind Infinity? Whatever.
Call from the Blind Eternities?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. That was in my sideboard.
And I got the Graph... something or other, Ghoul Colors Graft thing. It's an equipment that gives +3/+3, and the creature doesn't untap if you attacked with it in the last turn, and if it becomes unequipped, you have to sack the creature. But, if your deck is full of 2/2s that you just keep playing every turn and equipping and swinging for 5 a turn, it's pretty sweet.
Yeah. And then the roommate played a ridiculous life gain Flyers deck.
I think you were the only one he really busted the lifelink out against.
Oh, he had this stupid, ridiculous, dumb combo that he drafted into, and it was...
He really likes life gain. He thinks life gain is good. The reason that deck was good was not the life gain.
It was the Flyers.
It was the fact that all of the Flyers benefited from you gaining life.
Yeah.
Like the what was it? The Night Watch, Calestrian Night Watch?
Yeah,
Gets flying. Yeah. It was the something bat that...
Oh, yeah, the Malakir's Familiar or something?
Malakir Familiar, when you gain life, it gets +1/+1. And, stuff like that can really...
Oh, he stomped me hardly.
It's already a 2/1 flyer.
I was having some mana issues anyway, but boy howdy, that 4th and 5th flyer... Yeah.
Yeah, that's the key.
Yeah.
That's the ticket right there.
But it was super fun, and it's really neat to get a chance to play with cards you might not know, play with cards you might not care about, and get to really stretch yourself as a deck builder, coming up with kooky, interesting... Because if you're going to do that, then's the time to do it, right?
I would say my one problem with it is that a 4-player Winston draft is almost exclusively luck-based.
You think?
I feel like... Because there's no strategy involved, really, in the sense of what you take and what you leave. In a 2-player, you're like, oh, I don't think that pile is quite at the point where Tams is going to take it, so I think it's going to wheel. In a 4-player draft, you can't assume that anything is going to wheel.
Yeah,
I don't know. True. I was.
Unless there's literal stone cold garbage in it. So maybe it was because I was the 4th person. I just felt like there was no point in me trying to plan ahead because everything was going to be gone.
I wonder how it would be with 3 people.
Yeah, if only we had 3 people and we could try it sometime.
Maybe we should try that this year.
We would need to do something in the middle of... It's 90 cards for 2 players, so it would be 135 cards for 3 players. Does that sound right? Something like that?
I mean, it was fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had fun.
Just a bit different experience than 2-player, I think.
Yeah.
I think the only thing that feels wrong about Winston drafting with dollar store cards is we don't bother sleeving, and it feels so wrong to play without sleeves.
Real weird.
I sleeved.
I know.
I've forgotten how to shuffle unsleeved cards.
It's different. It's a very different feeling to shuffle unsleeved cards, and I don't know. The reason I like the dollar store packs, and these are like, they're 100 cards. They might include some basic land, and I think it's $4 for one of them.
Yeah.
You can also get 15-pack quasi boosters.
Yeah.
Right, with a guaranteed rare, which is going to be a garbage rare, but
of course.
at least, it's something. The reason I like it is it approximates a grab bag.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have any one set, block, or even time period that you're pulling things from.
But you also can't open a Shockland.
Probably not.
Unless they made a really big mistake at the factory.
Probably not. On the other side of drafting and sealed and all that stuff, we've also been doing cube things, right?
Like our Winston drafts, as we
like
mentioned.
the Winston drafts. So it's completely the other end, though, because with the grab bags, you're drafting like completely miscellaneous randomness, and with a cube, you're drafting exactly one set or block or whatever.
Yeah.
Or whatever archetypes somebody has put together. And as much as I love Theros, that cube is getting worn a little thin, I think, just because we've been doing so much of it recently. Like, I'll totally go back to it, in a couple of months.
And plus, Winston draft does feel different from a regular draft to a sealed event.
Hey, maybe we should just do a sealed.
Yeah, that sounds like fun. Sealed's my favorite format.
Anyway, what I was getting at is that while the Theros block cube is fantastic, I have also been finally going through the collection and putting together the other block cubes that we have almost ready. And I think both Khan's block and Battle for Zendikar block, I'm like 30 cards away from having a full cube ready to go.
And at least for your battle block, I have 28 of those remaining 30 cards.
Which is sweet, because mythics are kind of hard to find. It's not that they're expensive, it's just that I don't even know that stores in London might have a random mythic from a set that nobody played, right?
Steph,
Yo.
can you talk us through a little bit, how do you get your cube together? Like, are there apps or programs you use to make things easier? Like, how do you approach it?
Well, for the block for the block cubes, getting the cards together is easier because you have a list already made. Like, you know what cards are going in it. Versus a random cube that somebody makes up. They're going to have to think about what archetypes they want, and then they're going to have to think about what cards are good. And
power level. And
power level is a big thing.
Yeah.
But the beauty of a block cube is that all that's already taken care of. It feels, drafting a block cube, like nostalgia-based drafting a set, because everybody's got at least 3 mythics, so it feels amazing. I think I've only done it with Theros,
Right.
so we're gonna figure that out. But basically, I get a deck builder's toolkit box or a fat pack box that I have lying around, and start filling it with cards from the set. And I will just do that in collector's number, because that's the easiest way to make sure that you get everything. Is just count up to 240 or whatever the cards in the set are, and do that for each set involved. And then once I've got all of the cards that I have, I'll go through and find the numbers that are missing. And there are all sorts of great apps out there for basically having the Gatherer on your phone, where you can just look up cards. And some of them even have deck building portions of the program. So the two apps that I use a lot are Decked Builder, which I think is the company that made the card recognition software too, and MTG Familiar, which I use for a life counter when I don't have a pad of paper, and it also has a handy trading app to see whether the cards you're trading with your buddy are worth roughly the same amount.
Right.
So I have used both of those things to just store information about what I need for the cubes. All of the cards that I'm missing. And with MTG Familiar, that'll also give me a random, or not random, a relative scale of how much I'm going to need to spend if I have to buy those cards.
So you're kind of setting it up as if this were a deck that you were building.
In MTG Familiar, I'm setting it up as though I were trading with someone.
Oh, okay.
And so I've got, like, the cons block cube. I have 30 cards I'm missing. And if I were to just buy them all, it would cost about $30. So that's a dollar a card. That's not bad. With the Return to Ravnica block, I'm missing 127 cards. And
some of them are a little pricier than others.
Yeah, if I wanted to just buy all that I'm missing, it'd be like $260.
So we're not going to be doing that.
Well, there's a lot of good stuff in RTR block, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like, there's
so good.
The shock lands, there was Voice of Resurgence, all sorts of stuff you see in Modern.
I'm thinking a lot of the value is in the shock lands.
It is. It's like $100 right there.
Now, personally for you, if we got all of the components except the shock lands, would you be opposed to proxying in the shock lands until we get them?
In fact, as far as I'm not sanctioning drafts with the cube. It's just for fun at home.
Yeah.
And I would love to have all of the cards, but yeah, I'm totally going to proxy a Voice of Resurgence until I find one or open one in a grab bag draft or something. And the same is true of the shocks. Like, I am going to want to get a set of shocks at some point because I'm going to want to start playing Modern ish.
You and everyone else.
At some point, right. And I'm sure they'll be reprinted at some point, right?
I think that's the beauty of this game, though, is because there are so many different ways you can play it, whether you have money or not. So if you just want to play with your friends, I can remember my brother would proxy out cards that he liked for decks, and he'd have 3 cards that were actually Magic cards, and the rest were all proxies. But to be fair, he did a pretty good job. He did little pictures and everything, so we're like,
I
sure.
seem to recall he still had a proxied island, I think. When
we
were up there.
Because we
proxied an island?
Well, back when
What
we
did he
played,
use?
I don't even remember.
Yeah, it was pretty funny though.
I think it was a plains.
Yeah, and he just wrote island because at the time when we were
draw an island.
when we were playing, to be fair, we weren't buying, like, we had no place to buy Magic. We would get them from the little gumball machine thing, or once in a blue moon, if we went into a town that had cards, we could buy it, but it wasn't as easy to get as...
I mean, back then, you got your basic land out of your booster packs, too, right?
Yeah, so... I mean, he is still playing original art Sarah Angels, and...
That's pretty sweet.
Yeah. When we went up for Christmas, we sat down, and I didn't bring decks. We brought the cube just to instant draft. So what I did was I took all of the stuff we had already drafted, and I took all of the black out and made a pretty sweet singleton 60 card mono black deck with Gary. And my brother pulls out an infect deck, and I'm like, what? What is this nonsense?
Excuse you, I won that game.
I know.
Thank you.
But then he pulled out this really interesting Orzhov.
It was a fog until you drain them.
Yeah.
It was a black-white X spell that drains your opponent.
It was so neat.
And he had at least 8 fogs.
Yeah, and then a whole bunch of double strike stuff. And it was...
Flyers.
Yeah, double strike flyers. It was really interesting. I wish he had the time and the money to get into current Magic, because he could be amazing.
Sweet.
Yeah, he'd be amazing.
His deck building sensibilities are a little dated, but if he were in the current meta,
Turbo Fog's a deck.
He would, totally. Sometimes.
Yeah. This deck worked fine. I'm like, swing. He's like, nope. I'm like, oh.
I wonder how he would fare in a modern or a legacy or vintage kind of environment.
It would be funny.
Yeah, he'd love it.
It'd be interesting to find out.
Yeah.
It was especially great because right at the end, Tams thought she had gotten herself back into it.
Oh yeah, it was so good.
Forgetting that she had already seen he had a second copy of this black-white spell in his hand.
Completely forgot.
And had more than enough mana to completely kill her.
I was dancing in my head. I was so excited. Like, haha, I got you, you bastard. And then he killed me. And
then it's like, untap, play this second copy that you knew I had because you seen my hand.
So that was kind of your own fault.
It was tired. To be fair, it was
you
late.
had no way to play around it.
No, there's nothing I could have done. No. But it was super fun. So yeah, I think Magic is pretty cool in that respect, that there's just all these different things you can do.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
So how do you like to store your cubes, and how much land do you think is appropriate?
That's a good question. I think I've sleeved up too much land for the Theros cube.
Well, considering half the time we end up playing like
multiple games.
No, I was going to say monocolored decks.
It's funny how that can actually happen. Well, and Theros was a mono-colored set
with the
more than the
devotion
others.
mechanic.
I had sleeved up, I want to say, 50 of each of the basics, possibly more. I think 12 of each of the arts of each of the basics.
You know what you should do, actually? Remove exactly, 20, because then you'll be able to fit that extra pack of 17. The one that you always have to put on top, because you don't have quite enough room for it.
Good call. I will go and rejigger my cube later. But I think 50 is appropriate.
Yeah.
Depending on who's playing what, if two players get monocolor decks in the same color, you're going to run into trouble anyway.
Yeah.
Not that that's likely to happen, but
especially in a non-devotion type of format.
Yeah. You all right there?
Yeah, my phone is possessed. I don't know what's going on. I never have my sounds on, but today, for some reason, it's being a jerk. So what do you keep your cube in? I say like I don't know because I live with you, but I'm being a good interviewer.
During the building process, like I said, I use a fat pack box or a bundle box, or I really like the Deck Builder's Toolkit boxes because they've got the flip down lid. But when they're finally built and sleeved, including all the lands, and I am going to put all of the tokens in perfect fits and the whole thing, I use one of the holiday gift boxes for the set that
we haven't been able to afford to
and some of them have been terrible anyway.
Go up that step and purchase one of those fancy super expensive cube boxes, which I would love to own one day. But
sure, maybe, but they're also big and kind of not shaped the greatest for storage. Like the holiday gift boxes are perfectly they fit my cube perfectly. Like the Theros block cube fits in the Theros box,
and we could carry 4 easily stacked on top of each other. So that's fair.
So that's what I love, and unfortunately I don't think they're making them anymore, so I'm gonna have to find another solution there. But they made one for cons, they made one for everything up through Kaladesh. I think they made a Kaladesh one. So it's really just going to be the future that's uncertain. And actually, I don't think you can do a block cube with single set blocks.
That was my next question.
So I think what I'm going to do there is once Dominaria comes around, I'll probably get one of each mythic, one of each rare, 2 of each uncommon, and 3 of each common, and see how many cards that is.
You could also try pairing it with some of the core sets.
Not
necessarily Dominaria, but you could, decide if one of them is, kind of works well with the mechanics of the core set. Or they did say that they were thinking about having multiple sets for the same plane, even if they're not in a block.
And that's the other thing I've been looking at is, I've got my Theros block cube sleeved in white sleeves right now. I think it should more appropriately be in green sleeves, just because I think that's fitting. But the Ravnica, the RTR block one, is going to be in blue sleeves. The Shadows over Innistrad block is going to be in black sleeves.
Yep, need it for the double-sided cards.
Thick black sleeves. But also, based on just the tone of the set is what I'm thinking about. And so if they do another one-off Innistrad set, maybe I'll sleeve it in black and then shuffle it into the shadows block and see how that goes.
Yeah,
you know?
I mean, you can always take it out again.
Right. And so it might become a sort of modular thing where it's like, these things fit together. And maybe I want to put, Shadows over Innistrad into Theros. And so what if there are black and white sleeves together? Who cares? We'll just play it once and see how it feels.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in a casual environment with people you trust,
Yeah.
you can do that. Because you can be like, Tams, are you going to cheat? Nah.
Yeah. This is casual Magic we're talking about.
Yeah, like, if it's just for fun to learn, and you're with a playgroup that you can trust to take it in the spirit with what you mean, that's the sort of thing you can do.
Yeah.
Which I think is super cool.
So there'll be updates on that as they go. Like I said, we've got 2 more almost ready, and then 2 that are quite far off.
You just need to send me your list, and we can pretty much get the Shadows one knocked out.
Okay. So, yeah. That'll be upcoming in our future, which, by the way, speaking of our future...
Yeah, that was the next topic, basically.
Basically. The future of the podcast, I think we mentioned at the end of the last one. We're looking at a format change, and the format is going to end up being whatever we kind of feel like, but in a kind of structured manner.
Yeah, I think we're going to take it like 2 to 4 episodes at a time and just come up with an idea of, a project or a focus or an area or a method that we want to use or approach, and just do that for however long it takes.
Yep.
And then maybe take a week to just chit-chat about what's going on and what the news is like and what we've been up to outside of that particular project, and then decide what we want to do next and jump right on in.
And by projects, we mean maybe building a cube.
Maybe.
Or...
We have already begun the very beginnings, little bits of putting together a D&D campaign on a magic plane with magic everything. So I'm excited about that.
I'm super excited about that.
So
I've been playing D&D finally again for the last, couple of months, and I would love to play on a plane.
Because you found the new book.
Well, here's what happened was I thought, hey, let's do D&D. And then we spoke to a friend of the show, and he was like, yeah. And then he was like, crap, I have such a heavy schedule. I don't know if I could DM it. It just... And he was our first and really only choice at the time. And I said, well...
Our favorite choice.
Okay, but if you can't DM it, would you be in the party? He's like, yeah. So my brain immediately started coming up with all these cool narrative ideas. Now, I've played a couple of small campaigns, but I have very little experience.
You've played like a couple of
Pathfinder.
one-shots and a half of a campaign.
But I've grown up playing role-playing video games. I am a writer by trade, sometimes. So creating narratives and playing with numbers and things like that as far as like stats go. The stat system is not much different from the MMOs that I play. So
most of the MMOs you've played were based on
EverQuest.
D&D.
Yeah, EverQuest was my first one, and it's so much like D&D. It's frightening.
And the funny thing is that now D&D has been more built around those video games.
Yeah. So I was like, okay, I'm going to come up with this really cool idea. And I was coming up with what plane I wanted. And I kind of had this idea for a really cool story in Theros. But then I was like, oh, but I really, really love Innistrad. Oh, no. And then I opened my Christmas present from Laura, and I got the artwork of Innistrad. And I started reading it, and I'm like, oh, okay, we're going to go here.
There's a beautiful,
it's
beautiful
amazing.
book, by the way.
It's well worth having. It's incredible. So then
the art from the whole set is great.
It's amazing. Yeah, the writing in the book is really well. It's written by a writer, obviously. It's really well written. And then I googled and found out that there's actually campaign support for currently two planes, where Wizards has put together kind of a 40-page D&D campaign.
It's like a player's guide.
Yeah. So they've
guide.
got Zendikar and they also have Innistrad. So I went, we're gonna grab that first. I can tweak it how I want, but it's gonna give me, who's fairly new to things, a really good place to start from. So I've started working on that, and we're going to record our sessions, and it should be super fun.
can't wait.
And then you noticed halfway through the introduction of the player's handbook
that it's the same as the art book, and then they say further down, the best companion to this guide would be the art of Innistrad if you want more flavor and more ideas. And I was like, oh, because what I had intended to do originally was, okay, so let's look at D&D and see, okay, there's this creature. Well, I want centaurs from Theros. So what are like those in D&D, and kind of steal stats and have to rip them off? Well, now I'm not hopefully going to have to.
It wasn't a coincidence, by the way. I just know how much you love Innistrad.
Yeah, it's true. So I'm super excited about this, and hopefully it will be lots and lots of fun. I've already started planning the food meals for when we...
Oh, jeez.
Do we have a time frame on it, or
no? I'm thinking probably will be the February project.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
that quick?
Yeah, I want it to be relatively soon, and because I don't want it to go too long, because I will not get to it if I don't have a little bit of pressure.
Cool.
So yeah,
and then for January, and probably starting the next week or so, I volunteered Step.
You did? Oh, right.
Yeah, this is exciting for me.
I forgot. So, we all know that we're going back to Dominaria eventually, I think in the fall.
I think so.
And it's been a while since we've been there in Magic.
I've never been there.
You've never been there. Well, Magic started on Dominaria. The first, 10 sets were based on Dominaria. A lot of stuff happened on Dominaria. So, there's a lot of history there. And for people who are interested in the history of the game, the history of the worlds, and don't know, where it all began,
or where it left off,
it left off, so that we know what we might be walking into when we get back, we're going to do sort of a player's guide to Dominaria kind of thing. A history lesson. So there are some key characters that we know are going to be referenced, at least, in Dominaria. Karn, the Silver Golem. Teferi, who is a planeswalker who was based on Dominaria. And who else was there?
Joyra, I think.
Joyra.
And also Liliana.
Of course, Liliana we know is from Dominaria. And I have a hard time believing that they won't bring her into it when they go back. So we're going to be talking about that from a historical and modern perspective. So I'm looking forward to that, but I'm going to need a little bit of time to make sure I remember.
And do a bit of research. But, but since Tams and I are not that well versed in the lore, I think it's safe to say, it's going to be newbie friendly. And hopefully interesting if you aren't too familiar with the background.
I'm excited.
I hope so. Like, most of the stuff that eventually became big magic was from Dominaria. Nicol Bolas has ties to Dominaria. The Phyrexians invaded Dominaria. Like, that's invasion. So most of the big bads from Magic are tied to Dominaria in some way.
Yeah. Which makes sense for the original main plane, right?
I think the only ones that aren't are the Eldrazi.
Huh.
So
must be why no one likes them.
I guess.
Couldn't be that they're so overpowered. Nothing.
And then I also had an idea for a series which I don't think that I've brought you two around on. You both seem to be not quite on board with it, but I would love to do a deck building challenge for
it was
Standard.
More the fact that it was for Standard than the fact that it was a deck building challenge.
Not a fan of Standard?
I just haven't been able to get myself into it. Like, I have multiple Standard decks.
Sure.
But I just always have something I'd rather do on the weekend.
Isn't there that card that you would love to build a deck around? And
there's always that card she'd love to build a deck around.
But just time.
Yeah. That's
I
fair.
used to love going to Sunday Standard. I'd bring my little blue-white heroic deck. I'd get crushed. Sometimes I'd get lucky and do really well. And it was fun. And then I just kind of lost as much motivation to keep going, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, Standard... I love my Part the Watervale decks. and then that rotated out. And now it's just energy all the time.
Well, when does energy rotate?
In like a year.
Well, that's why I'm kind of hoping we can look at perhaps tackling something like Canlander decks.
Which I think would be fun, especially if we gave ourselves like a budgetary restriction, because that just makes it more likely that we'd actually be able to build it. Or like if you own the cards, then they don't count towards your budget. But if you would need to purchase them, then they count towards your budget, which is X.
And we're talking about a already existing deck premise here, so I couldn't just decide to build goblins.
Your own take on goblins, I would accept.
I mean, there is
you
no
better not
my
just
own
be
take on
stealing
goblins.
Former roommate's commander deck.
What do you mean former roommates? Goblins is all mine. He was all about the sly
Turbo Sly
portcullis standard.
Oh yeah,
standard of the time.
Good times.
Yeah.
Type 2, Type 1. I don't remember.
Oh, I remember the Russian mountains.
He took that to a GP and did not too bad. So
back in the day.
Back in the day. That's right. I personally have already started thinking about a Canlander deck, and I am resisting the urge to go out and look and see if there's already one in existence. So I'm just going to create it myself, and it's going to be terrible.
And I think
and fun.
A way we could work it into is that we record on Wednesdays. Wednesdays is the day that the shop has Canlander. So we could go there for a couple hours on Wednesday to try out our decks and then come back and report to you, the listeners.
That's true. I like it.
All right. I'm on board.
So just a thought.
I'm on board, except that I can't build mono black because you're already building mono black, and I doubt that I'd be able to build Bant because I imagine you're going to do something in Bant.
So you know, I'm not building mono black.
You're not building mono black?
Do you want me to tell you what I'm building?
Well, no. Let's leave it as a surprise.
All right.
All right.
You can rest assured I'm probably not building mono red.
But if I'm going to build mono red, I want to build goblins, and that's an already existing list, which you don't want to mess with too much.
I think it's fine just because Commander is so much different than Canlander, and as long as you're not neck decking the Canlander version of it and you're building your own, that totally
Doesn't bother me.
A new deck.
Well, we'll have to figure it out as we go. But as you can hear, we've got lots of interesting and exciting things that are going to be happening.
Yeah, Tam says the rest of the list, which is... Oh, God, now I have to try and read your handwriting.
Crafty?
Dominaria. Oh, that's D&D. I thought it said dad. Oh, yeah.
Pretty, but not terribly functional if you're not familiar with it.
Yeah, so Tams and I, at the very least, I know, Step, you are creative in your own way.
I'll figure something out.
But we are crafty in many senses of the word. And that involves, I enjoy crocheting, and I don't enjoy it, but I can knit. And I've already done a couple of magic things, dice bags, which were not magic themed, but also dice bags that were magic themed. Sure. And I've got my eyes on a couple of patterns. Like there's a scarf where you basically just do up a square of, the black on gray skull and the green tree.
Please.
And then you just, match them all together and you got yourself a scarf.
I want.
That sort of thing. So, Tam, you are also crafty.
Yes.
In several ways.
I create the last magic thing I think I created was little boxes out of tip cards that we used. I, cut there was left a half inch around the outside so that, the bottom few were solid, and then they just kind of built up and I stacked them very high and then made a lid, and it's really cool looking.
And you also made some Xenagos.
Oh yeah,
stuff.
Yeah, that's right. Step cosplayed as Xenagos for Halloween. So I made him
there are pictures out there on the internet.
Yeah, I made him his cuffs out of clay. So yeah, we'll probably do some sort of crafty thing.
It might not be a long series or anything.
No.
But
cosplay introductions, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exciting.
Yeah.
And then Tams and I also, because we have more spare time on our hands to think about these things, I guess.
You're not wrong.
We were thinking maybe we might do a bit on music and magic. And how, even though, it's not like Wizards of the Coast puts out the Magic the Gathering soundtrack or anything like that.
I think they're missing out, but yeah.
There has been accompaniment music to Dungeons and Dragons. There's been an official Dungeons and Dragons
cool.
music CD, and that's Wizards of the Coast as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't see any reason they couldn't do a magic themed experience. They just haven't. So I guess they're
basically
leaving
they just repeat the same orchestral movement
I think that's actually from the Dungeons and Dragons CD.
in the background as they're playing the
Cheaters,
same fight
cheaters,
for 400 hours
cheaters.
during the Pro Tour coverage. But we thought, we could possibly approach it from the opposite direction in that, finding music that has been written by people about magic.
Mm-hmm.
And also possibly doing a writing challenge.
Yeah, because
A
some of
music
us
/ poetry
Yeah, some of us / all of us sing, and at least one of us writes really cool parody stuff. Steph, not talking to you. Yeah, so that could be super fun.
And I can write dirty limericks.
Boy, howdy! I think it's going to be super fun.
We had poetry on one of our podcast episodes very early on.
Yes, Laura did a dirty limerick.
That's true. Well, that was... I did make up for it later in I think the next episode by reciting some poetry from Lord of the Rings.
Yes, you did.
Indeed.
But, a good limerick is always good to have in your back pocket.
Sure.
Absolutely.
So
there's lots of exciting stuff to look forward to.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything else we wanted to talk about before we send the new year off?
Yeah, there is something coming up in Toronto in the not too distant future, and then again in the slightly further distant future.
So I think you're talking about the GPs.
I am.
GP Toronto is happening in February the 9th to 11th, and by February I mean also in May.
Yeah.
Yep.
What was it, the 13th or something?
Yeah. So we here in the Toronto area get 2 GPs this year.
It's like a 2-hour drive from here
Yeah.
to get
That's
to
not too bad.
where they are. So
It's like 30 minutes from my parents' house, which is what we do. Go
especially
there.
at like 6 a.m. on a weekend.
Yeah, it is.
So, the first one is modern, and the second one is trios constructed.
Yes.
Which means somebody brings a standard deck, somebody brings a modern deck, somebody brings a legacy deck.
So who's going to take the legacy deck?
Who's got one?
Hey Riley,
So, hey,
build us a legacy deck.
speaking of Riley, that is something else that is hopefully coming to the channel, to the YouTube channel.
YouTube, because we haven't honestly had the money to play Magic Online is expensive.
Yes, but Riley is an accomplished, having just beat LSV, vintage cube online player.
Beating LSV online isn't so hard because he always drafts, dumb stuff.
You mean the exact same deck over and over and over and over?
Look, in order to practice forcing Storm, you have to force Storm.
But he is also one of the most accomplished players, of all time.
Yeah, you give him a pile.
So
He can probably pile
Being
it.
able to beat him is, I think, a very good accomplishment.
the fact that our boy Riley, who has been on this very podcast, I don't remember which episode, but you
the
guys
one where
were
we
out,
weren't here.
you were out west, has beaten LSV on possibly on his channel.
I wasn't on stream anyway.
Oh well. Means that there's hope.
Yeah. So we're going to convince Riley to record some of his shenanigans, and we're going to put that up on the YouTube channel.
And by convince, we mean he's going to listen to this and then do it because he's that kind of chap.
Because he's going to
Peer
feel
pressure.
Peer pressure, peer pressure, peer pressure. We love you, Riley.
So, back to the GPs, though.
Yeah.
They are happening.
Mm-hmm.
We are not yet sure what the schedule is going to be like for side events, because none of us have a modern deck.
No.
I mean, unless we want to put together a modern deck that is not tier 1, which is doable.
I'm thinking about it. I don't know that I want to spend the $90 and go and get stomped all weekend. And also, after we were looking at it, and you mentioned it's basically a month away, and they still don't have the side event up.
Yeah, they've so far only, on the website, the details are only for packages.
Yeah.
So they don't have any information about individual pricing for a side event. So if you just want to show up and do a draft or something, we have no idea how much it is.
Yeah.
So, we'll find out. And then, same thing goes for the May one. I mean,
the May one I'm more interested in because I love team events, period.
somebody could put together a standard deck, surely.
Sure. I mean, that would be an interesting...
And then someone could build modern goblins. Surely.
Possibly.
I'm sure we know people we could borrow a modern deck from.
I mean, well,
yeah, it's much more the legacy deck that would
Yeah.
need to be carried.
my biggest problem with modern and legacy decks that we could borrow from other people is that half of the cards are in foreign languages, and that just bugs me.
Well, it doesn't bug me, but for somebody who doesn't know how to play the deck to start with,
You would want to do a bit of practice beforehand.
Yeah.
I would think so, but we'll
But
look
I
at it as a possibility.
That would also be an interesting project.
Series of podcasts, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's something we're thinking. Why are we looking at me?
Because you're talking.
You're talking.
Oh, okay.
We're being polite.
I thought it as long as it's not a Laura buys a vintage deck for the.
Hey, Laura, how do you feel about buying a vintage deck?
So just some things that might come up in the next few months. We'll say,
Yeah.
just depending on the details and scheduling and pricing and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Could be fun. We all had fun at the last GP.
So much fun.
Our
We
store
did.
owner and like probably good half dozen regulars from the shop who we're all quite friendly with. They all went. Eventually, ended up dropping out in day one and then doing side events. And they all said that the quality of the competition at the shop means that they all crushed side drafts.
That's
that
awesome.
makes me feel
That's
really
encouraging.
good about our shop. I mean, it's such a nice place to play. It's nice to know that we're of a decent competitive level.
As someone who regularly prices at F&M, it made me quite interested in going.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's fair.
Yeah, so that's
All right.
really cool.
So that's what we have going in the next few months,
Mm-hmm.
as well as I guess we've kind of looked at the past.
A little bit.
As always, if you have suggestions for projects or more in-depth topics that you'd like covered, let us know. Otherwise, we're just going to do whatever we want, and you can't stop us.
We are always willing to gabble on for great lengths of time about things at the smallest provocation. So,
Boy, is that true.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, thanks very much for listening.
Mm-hmm.
And try and stay warm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Sweet.